Zero News, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night segment of Horsefly Chronicle Radio with myself, Julia Syracuse, and Philip Syracuse. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. We love them. There are a few things in order to participate. Go over to our YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, or International Public Radio. You can also go into all of the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip, SoundCloud, and Podbean. Also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. And then if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. Tonight, guys, we have an amazing guest. So please welcome Mark Fiorentino to the show. Mark is an author and has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory. Ever since hearing about it when he was 10, he worked for many years in the high-tech industry, including for IBM. Tonight, we will discuss how the applications of Einstein's theory can be used to travel through space and the connection to the theories, including UFOs and the alien technology that they use, as well as topics such as near-death experiences. I'm sure you are going to have a really good time.
Looking forward to it.
So please welcome him to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me on. Looking forward to an interesting discussion tonight.
Most definitely.
Yes, definitely. So, Mark, how did you get started and what brought you into this world of research, and how did you first get so excited about the Einstein's unified field theory?
Well, it started when I was very young, 10 years old, and going to catechism classes. I was asked, well, the whole class was asked by the nuns that were teaching the class to find a saint born on our birthday. I went home, 1965, no internet. Not really very easy to find somebody born on your birthday. They didn't put out books like that then. So I asked my parents, and they didn't know of any saints born then. And then I went over to the calendar, and I saw Albert Einstein's name on my birthday, March 14, Pi Day. And I looked him up in Encyclopedia Britannica and just fell in love with the guy and all his theories, especially the unified field theory. And then it proceeded on. I started reading a lot about science in general, and eventually got into UFOs and was realizing that the UFOs use some sort of a bias drive. I didn't call it by that name then, but I realized there was some sort of force field going out around the craft. And I thought, well, if they figured this out, they figured out the unified field theory. So I added to my studies the studies of UFOs and that sort of thing, and that kind of got me into the whole physics thing even deeper. And then the next 45 years, I continued to read about Einstein and Maxwell and Newton and Faraday and all these guys, and they all had a key piece that contributed to my theory of super relativity, which is really basically an extension of general and special relativity. So that's how I got into the whole thing.
Wow.
Wow.
What's your thoughts on UFOs? Have you ever seen one? Are you a firm believer?
Yes. And I have seen them. The first time I think I officially saw some was when I was living in Miami, and we were all standing by the pool one night. In Miami, the sky at night in the summertime, you don't see many stars. You're lucky if you see the moon. Uh, it's that much light pollution. But on this particular night, there were like 7 very bright orange colored objects kind of floating up and down relative to each other in a kind of a staggered kind of formation, vertical. And they were just bobbing up and down very slowly. And then suddenly the top one went, whoosh, and the next one, whoosh, and they all went straight up out into outer space, and they were gone. And next day there was a big uh, article in the Miami Herald about it, and thousands of people saw the UFOs, and that was my first time. The next time really that I had a good close look is right here at my home. I got up at 3 in the morning. I was going to get something to drink, and I was looking at the refrigerator and noticed all these red and green lights flashing. I says, wow, the cops must have stopped somebody in front of the house. So I turned around to look, and it was over the lake. There was this oblong shaped object, and I got very excited, and I went into the bedroom and got my wife up, who was a big non-believer. And to this day, she won't talk about it. But I brought her in there and I made her look at it. I says, now, what do you think that is? Do you think it's an airplane? It's making no noise. A helicopter? No noise, no sounds, just floating slowly back and forth right in front of our house over the lake. And she was just frightened by it. And to this day, still won't talk about it that much. But
So let me ask you a question. I am a believer in UFOs. How do you know it wasn't the government with these? Maybe they didn't have drones or something back in the day that we didn't even know about. How do we know that it was something otherworldly?
that's a good question. I think in general, the UFO phenomena, since going back to when we first started seeing them officially in the mid 40s or so, uh, back then you could be guaranteed those UFOs were from outer space, extraterrestrials. Nowadays, I strongly suspect we have our own, maybe starting as early as in the 1970s. And I have been, since I've been doing these shows, I have been contacted by people who have seen UFOs in the 1970s. They wish to remain anonymous, so I won't give you their name because they're frightened of being attacked by the government or whatever. And so they told, or this person told me a story. He proved his identification. He sent me papers saying what he did and what he is a professional. And he told me of a night when he and his friend in the desert saw a UFO, and they got so close to it they could touch it, and
Wow.
they saw the mark. It was just a very small one, about the size of a Volkswagen, and they saw the markings on it. And those markings said U.S. Air Force experimental. So I know for sure we have them since at least the 70s. We've reversed engineered them. So nowadays, there's a big question. Are they ours, or are they, some reversed engineer thing that we put together? Or are they some alien craft from who knows where, which virtually I'm sure we've been visited by hundreds of different planetary systems over the years, maybe thousands, because this has been going on, I'm sure, for tens of thousands of years. So the answer to the question is, it's hard to say who they are, but
Yeah.
if they have no engine, no rocket, no engine, no jet engine, no turboprops, nothing like that. And they're zipping around and they're moving fast and they make no sonic boom. There's some kind of UFO, advanced technology that's using a spatial bias drive.
Do you think anyone's driving them, or they're like drones themselves? That something else is occupying them, but they're not inside of them, for example.
I think for the most part they're occupied. Now,
They're-
it's if I were running the space program, and I think for a lot of other planets, I think they would send drones first to go down to the planet, because there's millions and millions of planets just in our galaxy. So it would pay off to go, hey, send out 1,000 drones to the 1,000 nearest stars. And these drones go faster than the speed of light, or this isn't going to work. So they're using what I call the slip wave technology, which is the entry level UFO technology that I propose in my book and that I'm doing experiments on now. So you send out these drones first. They make measurements. They see if there's an atmosphere, if there's any life. They report back at beyond the speed of light coming back. So this is an efficient system that you can go and then pick out the planets you want to go to that have life on it. There's something interesting somewhere where you can colonize or whatever you want to do. So that's the way I would do it. And I think that's probably the way, this is speculation, but it's reasonable to assume that for the most part, they start out sending drones. But once they know you're here, it's probably pretty common thing that most of the time they're going to send the real deal with people on board. And one of the ways I guess you could tell, if they're very small, odds are that's a drone.
The biggest controversy, again, I'm a believer, so I want to put it out there. But I get asked myself, and everybody has the question, well, how come they just don't appear in New York City or the White House lawn? And are we to believe that they're so intelligent and yet they have a deal with our government and other governments around the world that they cannot reveal themselves in such a way because we can't comprehend it? There's the part that we all get lost, because if you have that kind of intelligence, I don't think you're going to care. What's your thoughts on that?
I've given that a lot of thought, and I've interviewed people who have claimed that they've had alien contact and such, and it's been a pretty consistent answer on their part, is that we're not ready yet as a global community, and that it might cause panic. It really depends a lot on how they're introduced. If they show up in mass and fill the skies with ships and they're all going around, people are going to panic. If they go down onto the White House lawn and, the White House, the president comes out and greets them and shakes hands, that's not going to be too scary. I think they can handle that. But there's a lot of stuff going around in the background. Our government, I'm sure, wants to keep it secret. The existence of aliens and the technology is the highest secret this government has. So they're in no hurry to disclose anything.
Okay.
If somebody did land on the White House lawn, you could pretty much bet that they would seal off the area, ban all videos, and not allow anybody to know what's going on. This is the way they kind of operate when they find crashed UFOs. They seal the area off. Nobody views everything. They clean the whole site up to the last speck, move everything out undercover, and nobody knows a thing.
So in essence, the government knows, and everything that's come out in the last 2 years where they say that they can't, in all the news channels, they can't identify, it's unexplained. So then we're being lied to, according to what you're saying, plain and simple, we're being lied to. Because if they do know, they're not going to come forward and say, this is what we have, we reversed engineered it, not saying that at all. In fact, they're saying the opposite, that we don't even think it's from another planet. We don't know what it is. Now, I personally believe that these are from somewhere far away. And yeah, I always come to the question of, does the government know? Well, they don't know. I mean, are they just playing that stupid? What you think that's what they're doing?
Well, it's hard to contest it. Well, when they come out and say, "Well, I don't know what that is," do you? You can't tell. You're looking at it on this radar. We have no idea what that is, and of course, in my opinion, that's a lie. And they're going to keep this as secret as long
Mhm.
as they can, because this
Yeah.
technology gives them strategic military advantage, and they don't want to give that up.
Which is
So,
understandable. But then again, are we the only country that has one of these? Does Russia have one? Does China have one?
well, lately I'm hearing that there's an agreement between us and some of our other countries, and I don't know to what extent this is, or whatever, how much cooperation they're getting between each other. I have a feeling, you could call it a cabal, some sort of a world government thing going on. There may be more of that going on, much more than I know about and can really notice. But I'm telling you, the media, they have people in the media all over this country, and they're told, if you do have some UFO sighting, you cut to something else. You don't show it. And that's exactly what MDC did once, when they had somebody on there that produced the UFO, and they said, we can't show this. They cut the camera and went to something else.
Yeah.
So they're in on it.
They're
To
doing it.
Yeah, so this is going to be a real hard sell to get this out there, to the
I think
public.
I have a question. Do you think that the reason that we haven't had a complete disclosure is because of the church? Or do you think that this is due to, you know, the military and what they see and, how they control the sky?
Well, the church seems to be involved, the Catholic Church, the Pope.
Mhm.
They have their own science department, and there's rumors flying around that they have had access to a time machine type portal thing. Uh, that's coming out and being discussed now, and they do have um, they do have something of they're involved in this, because if it is proven beyond any shadow of a doubt that aliens exist, then they have to fit that into the religious scheme somehow, because, gee, that was never mentioned before.
Yeah, yeah,
And how do we go back and fix the
yeah,
Bible and all this
yeah,
stuff to account for, we're not the center of the universe?
yeah.
We're not the center of the soul. We're not the center of anything. And that there's millions upon millions of other life forms, and they count just as much as we do. They're important beings just like we are. And that's got to be explained somehow, and fit. Hopefully they're working on something, but someday, sooner or later, the cat's going to get out of the bag, and it's going
Yeah.
to become obvious to the world we're not alone.
That's
Yeah.
so true what you said. I mean, people that at that point, religion, there's a toss up now, what you were taught, what to believe, and
Yeah.
it causes
Well,
chaos, and then then people don't believe in the government, and which,
Mhm.
quite
they
frankly,
want that
who does?
centralized government idea. They're really big on that. Uh, we Earthlings, at least some of us, uh, uh, but it, the aliens, they're universalists. They believe in a universal God, not just for
Yeah,
us. And that's kind of where I'm at over the years. I'm a theist. I believe in intelligent design. So I just not talking about, evolution and not evolution. The whole thing is intelligently intelligently designed. I'm talking about the entire universe, right down to the very last atom is put forth. And there are people who are having NDEs who are coming back and confirming that from God. And I can give you one. He's on my site, Father Rick Wendell. This is a quote from God that is speaking to him while he's having his near-death experience. And he says, all of this three-dimensional world is within God. There is nothing outside of God. Everything within this physical universe has to correspond to laws, and God set those laws. They are immutable as God is immutable. None of this, what we see and experience, is an accident. It is intentioned by God. And that fits the theory of super relativity perfectly. I completely agree with that. And there's others that are saying the exact same thing. The evidence is out there. It's just going to be really hard for mainstream science to accept that religion and science need to be merged.
That's true.
Yeah.
Then who created the universal God?
God is eternal. So that's a concept that, us finite beings have a hard time dealing with. He was always here. I still struggle with that. I keep thinking to myself, there was no beginning.
Yeah.
It was always here. And
Yeah.
that space is really what I've come to the conclusion now is that we are living this reality, this physical reality is a shared dream inside the mind of God. Now, others want to call this some other kind of a matrix or any of these other fancy names. Basically, kind of the same thing. We're in a shared dream that we are in a physical form. We're in the human avatar mode. If you're born here on this planet, you're born on another planet, that's a different avatar. And those avatars, the physical thing affects your thinking when you're born, your consciousness. So there's a mixture there, and you go through a life experience. Your life experience is a gift from God given to you so that you can have all these experiences, all these limitations of pleasure and suffering and all in between everything. And what you do when you return is you give that gift back, you return it to God so that you have your life experience, and that becomes part of the Akashic records and a part of the eternal experience that God is getting through all beings. They're all funneling back in, returning, giving out their experiences, still existing as individuals there in the afterlife or the forelife, which we should realize is the way things are really going. Us humans, our souls, our consciousness have been around a long time. I don't know if we are eternal in the sense that we always were. We may have been created, but we are eternal now. There is no death. Of course, there's physical death, but there's no conscious spiritual death. Once you leave your body, you go back to heaven. You debriefed, so to speak. You go about classes and do things of that nature, is what I'm hearing from the best psychics in the world that I have talked to, and I've talked to many mediums and NDEs. The evidence is overwhelmingly in favor. There is a God. The God has always been here, always will be here, and we should be teaching this like in the first grade when kids come to school. Learn where you actually came from heaven. I know you can't remember because there's a process where your memories are stripped before as you're being born. That's just by design the way it works. And now you come here and you have to remember what you came in this life to do. And I've seen from one NDE experiencer who went through a training period and was given access to the whole pre-birth situation where he sees how people go through training before they come to Earth or any other planet, but Earth in particular, because this is an incredibly difficult planet to be born into. There is a lot of problems here, and it's got to do with our type, our human, where we have a lot of emotions and they can get out of control and affect our thinking in very either positive ways or very negative ways. And, we're warring with each other, and it's a lot of destruction and hate and anger here. And we've forgotten the golden rule, the one commandment that God sent to us. Do you guys know what that commandment is?
What is it? Enlighten us.
Love one another.
That's true.
Oh, yes.
If you do that, if we do that, all problems get fixed, because you're always doing things from a angle, from a position and perspective of love. So you would never say or do anything to hurt anyone else because you love them. So if that were the whole setup, through governments, through local organizations, through all the races and religions, having mutual respect and love for one another, all problems evaporate, and we have a society that's free and at peace. But it's not so easy to do.
I wish the world could just work that way.
No, well, that's true. What he's saying is true. But that goes with everything, like, the chaos with humans, the chaos with even animals that fight each other and kill each other. It's kind of like
this system was designed to be difficult like that.
Yes.
That's not an accident, and it's designed to be hard. I remember one lady yelling at God, trying to argue with him, and that he's sending her back, and she doesn't want to come back. And she complains to him and says, "It's hard here." And then God says, in a bellowing voice, she said, shook the whole universe. He says, "It's supposed to be."
Yeah.
It's the way it is. So you're born here with a hand of cards. You play that hand as best you can. You play those cards, and you're given certain gifts and certain deficiencies, and you just have to play that out and see how it goes.
It's true.
Like Kenny Rogers' song. You have to know how to hold.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can win with a pair of deuces, just bluff. That's playing the hand.
Hey, do you think aliens do walk amongst us and we just don't know it?
Good question.
Well, if they look enough a lot, like us, I suppose. I don't think that's an impossibility. And I've heard stories of people claiming, at dinner parties and such, these people introduced themselves, and they looked a little different, but they still looked human. And apparently there are some that are here. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going around, and I try to keep an open mind and say, what if this is true? What does this mean? Instead of just saying, "Oh, that's crazy, I'm not going to listen to it." I try not to block out. I just keep an open mind, and I say, well, they might be making this up. They could be telling a story here, but let's just keep it in the memory, and maybe it'll come in handy someday. I might be able to refer to that.
World where we have to have an open mind about everything.
I mean, think about it. We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere in the universe. A rock. That's what we are when you really look at us. We're a tiny little thing, and think that we're the only ones. You have to be, not having an open mind and clueless. There's just so much out there. I do believe in aliens and UFOs and interdimensional beings, and not because people tell me to believe or because I listen to anybody, but because I've had my own experiences that are unexplainable, and I still question it at 54 years old, how, the possibilities. But then I go back to, I remember in the 80s, I have a friend, and his father was this big attorney in New York, and he had these books in his house, in Staten Island on UFOs, and he was talking about magnetics and how these things were being pulled through gravitational force. They have a way of technology that we don't even understand. And I was a teenager at the time, and I was like, that's impressive to even think like that. And today's day and age, I kind of think like that just makes sense. It just makes sense. Magnetics. There's something that we don't have, and a fashion where these things can go so quick in the water, out of the water. They just zigzag, you know. And again, I'm a firm believer, and there's things up there we can't explain. Some of them is military, that we have things, and other things are just other things that these encounters where people have been abducted. Well, everyone's not crazy.
No, there's too many cases.
There's stories out there that are impressive.
You're right.
And I would love to hope that one day the government will come forward and clean, and people would accept it is what it is. This is real. We're not alone. And, we'll see what happens. I mean, now they say NASA's involved, but like you said earlier in the show, that they already know. The government already knows what's going on. And I believe you. We have satellites. I mean, come on, we're picking these things up.
Yeah.
They're not showing everything. Like a few weeks ago on the, they're trying to do the briefing on the news, and there's the classified information, and then we don't know about the unclassified information behind closed doors. And they're showing you part of a UFO, but not, and then the Jeremy Corbell says, well, they're not showing you everything because we know everything. We've seen the videos. So they're not putting it all out there in the public's eye. These things are real. And so then aliens do have emotions, according to what
some.
Because if they're not going to show up when they want to at any point in time, then they have thought process of emotions, how we would take it.
Well,
because frankly, if you have that technology, right, and you're way far advanced than we'll ever be, in this lifetime, then you're probably thinking about how we're going to rationalize with what you really are. And I don't believe our government controls that end of them, saying, well, you can't do this and can't do that because they're so far advanced, that are there deals made? Maybe. Some people believe that the Galactic Federation and the governments have deals that are made that have always been in stone. And I guess there's truth to that as well.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the problem that makes all of this so confusing is there's so many people, other aliens if it was just one type, or well, this could be easier to box in and know a lot more about. But then some people will talk about the Greys, the other people will talk about the reptilians, the other people will talk about the Palladians. Holy cow. How many rules? These guys have this set of this federation. There's more than one federation, by the way. So
that just leaves us with more questions, right?
Yeah, to us, it's just like this hodgepodge of information we're trying to go through and make some sense out of, when we're only given, just chunks of information from this people and that people. And then we got the Disinformation Bureau throwing out their stuff to further confuse the issue. So basically, the government still really has us where they want us. We're going on all these shows and we're talking about what do you think and what is this and what we think and what we know, probably two very different things. So I've kind of moved beyond. I'm kind of like you. Okay, you know what? I know they exist.
Yes.
Mathematically, let's face it, sensibly, logically, this universe is way too big to not have other beings. And we're pretty much the new guys on the block. We're just out of the Stone Age a few hundred years. we know hardly anything. And unfortunately, this government is going to keep it that way as long as they can. We're still going to be running around trying to see who wins American Idol, or who's going to win the Super Bowl. They got us right where they want us.
It's true.
And we're stumbling in the dark. And most people are not even thinking about this. We're in
Right.
another class here thinking and talking about this because the metaphysics of this universe, all this, what's real, what's happening, what the hell is going on? Excuse me. Yeah, that's didn't mean that. What the heck is going on is all a part of the problem, and we're all kind of feeling our way around and trying to figure it out. Well, that's why I'm kind of on this show and these other shows to try to establish this. I'm about bringing anti-gravity technology into this world. If we do it, there is great benefits to mankind, and we'll also be able to on our own contact other worlds. Because if we can break the light speed barrier, which I know how to do, and you're right, your uncle, was it, who brought up the magnetics thing?
Oh, my friend's dad back in the 80s, a
Friend's
big
dad.
fan.
Well, guess what?
He had a book, he written his own. He didn't publish it, but he had word for word how it was done.
He's exactly right. It has everything to do with magnetics. You see, this universe is not as complicated as it seems to be. There's really only three forces in the universe: the electrostatic field, which is a twist of space, a torsion field. The torsion field, the charge, the Coulomb force, it's all the same thing, has motion because of its structure. That's what Einstein was working on. He says in his general unified field theory paper, he says in the last two sentences, and I looked for this because I'm looking for the same equation. Nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of equations I derived. The reason for that is I did not succeed in deriving the equations of motion for particles yet. That's the key. So what I'm saying is the electrostatic charge, like in the electron or any particle, they all have electrostatic charge, causes motion. And it's caused by a pressure gradient that's inside of the particle. So it has a velocity, a motion in a direction. And once that happens, once that charge moves, the second force comes into existence, the magnetic field, which goes around and is a torsional reaction to the moving charge. Now we're 2/3 of the way to the unified field theory. The final thing was to link gravity to this motion of particles. And I found that the solution to that is the super relativity gravity explanation is quite simple. Gravity is caused by the accelerated motion of fundamental unbalanced charges. When charges move in this way, they cause the space in and around the particle to contract. Gravity is a contraction of the spatial medium. So the electrostatic force field is a twist of the medium. The medium is the ether. So to define what we're all working on here, why I'm bringing up these three forces, is Einstein believed this: electromagnetism and gravity emerge as aspects of a single fundamental field. That's the unified field theory in one sentence. The field was the ether, or space itself, another name for the same thing. And so these particles exist within this solid, quasi-elastic solid, this ether medium. And so in order to get to anti-gravity, you have to use particles that are moving through space like this, like the electron, in a wire to make a magnetic field, so that the magnetic field is going in one end and going out the other end, turning around and stretching space. The stretching of space, because of this distortion, this bending of it with the magnetic field, causes space to stretch. It expands, and that's the anti-gravity field.
Wow.
It's just that simple. So that if you use big, powerful magnets, and I won't tell you the other ingredient yet, because I'm still working on it. And when that experiment is done, we can talk about that, the results of that. But when you put these two things together, magnetism and this other thing, you're going to get the anti-gravity field. And then things are going to get interesting. Because could succeed in making this known to the world, then people like Sanyo and Hitachi and Chevy and Ford, they can all start building supercars, anti-gravity car, hovercraft, like on Star Wars.
Wow.
The people in the future have seen this occurring. The great psychic, the sleeping prophet, um, what's his name? Well, I always have trouble remembering his name. He's passed away now. Oh, it's so frustrating when I can't think of his name. I need to write it down. Anyway,
We'll remember it later.
anyway, he saw it in some of his trances that we were driving in the not too distant future now, maybe 30 or 40 years from now. We're zipping around in buses that are going at 1,000 or so miles an hour. We're going across above the surface in these kind of vehicles at incredible speeds, like the UFOs do. The beauty of using the slip wave, which I describe in detail in my book, that uses the magnetic field to achieve this spatial bias property, is that not only can you break the light speed barrier or go any velocity you need to go very fast in the atmosphere, but it thins out the space around the craft so that the air becomes rarefied to the point so when it's moving rapidly, it makes no noise because it's like a bubble with a gap of almost no air at all. So it's able to go through and make no pressure wave and no sonic boom. That's why the UFOs do not make a sonic boom. The other problem that needs to be fixed and is fixed by using this spatial bias drive is that when you're inside, the magnetic field is, let's say, all around the ship, really powerful, hundreds of Teslas. So it's bent space in such a configuration that one end is really turned on powerfully, but the rear end is super high intensity magnetic field. So you have a gradient and you shoot in that direction because of that pressure wave. And you need to use shielding. Fortunately, the magnetic field can be shielded, but not the gravity and the anti-gravity field. So you build in the ship to protect the inhabitants from the powerful magnetic field. You can reflect the magnetic field, and you can short it through a ferrous material. So you got two shielding methods to make it safe inside. So the only thing the inhabitants of the UFOs feel is weightlessness. It's as if there's no gravity at all in there. And when they accelerate, they have no inertia. So, when we're in a car and we hit the gas, we're pulled back. That's inertia. Well, that's an interaction between all the particles in your body and space, normal space. But when you pull it apart using the magnetic field, it becomes so rarefied and thin that you don't have inertia. So they can move and it's like they're not even moving at all. They didn't have any windows in their ship. They would have no idea that they were going 2,000 miles an hour in this direction and then suddenly went up 2,000. If you did that in a jet or attempted to do that, your bones would be crushed.
Wow.
You would not survive. That's how they can do it. It's the perfect system. It all makes sense. It's the way it has to be in order to achieve the kind of space travel we need. This field solves everything, and it's through high magnetics, just as your friend's father said.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And you know what the best part about this is? We don't need gas. Right? So
No.
we don't have to pay for gas.
Well, you need energy, and you need a lot of it. That's the problem. Obviously, the aliens have solved as well.
We're coming.
Yeah, I know that's interesting.
We're coming to the end of the show, but I really want to get into your book. Where can people find your book, and what inspired you to write?
Yeah, let's talk about your book.
Yes.
Okay. Oh boy, this is a whole nother there's two pathways. There's the one I told you about, the kid and the science and everything, but then there's the spiritual pathway. At the age of 19, I encountered a medium, and it was a normal reading that I had. You know, you'll be married, you'll have two kids. All of that came true. You go into electronics, that came true. All of it came true. And then my friend went in. He went in, came out. We got in a car. We're driving to Daytona to meet up with other buddies after this over. And during that drive, he said something to me that changed my life. He said, "That's something about you, Mark." And I said, "What are you talking about?" Well, the lady told me someday you would make a great discovery. You would write a book, some sort of invention. You would be famous. And I says, wonder why she didn't tell me that. That's kind of a big thing. Why would you leave that out? And I thought about it. And I said, oh, because if she'd have said that, I'd have started asking questions. And I would have started to dig and try to find out the details so I could make it happen quick. But it wasn't something that was going to happen quick. I had to go through a whole bunch of life experiences. And then from that, 5 more psychics that I met on various reasons, nothing to do with this book or anything, confirmed what the first one said. And 3 of them said the exact same thing. They says, in your final years, you will be a spiritual teacher.
I love when that happens.
And how did they know this? How did they know this? And then the final one I talked to told me a whole bunch of stuff, channeling, talking to Einstein. I mean, I could write a whole nother book, but what went on in that one. And
I love when that validation happens, though. It's great.
There's some evidence I got there. I give you one very specific so that you know that there is an afterlife, and you know that your parents and your friends, they don't really die. I went to this meeting with my first wife, and the medium says, your mom is here, and she wants to tell you that she's been in the bedroom at night sitting in the golden yellow chair that you asked her to sit in. And that's exactly what I did. I used to pray to her, and I used to invite her to sit in the golden yellow chair in the bedroom, and I used to look at her or pray to her, talk. I couldn't see anybody or couldn't hear anything, but that's what I used to do. How did that lady know that detail? There's no way, unless that was really my mom telling her to confirm. That's evidence. That's rock solid evidence. There is an afterlife. We don't die. And there is a God.
Yes.
And
Yep.
That's true. We're at the end of the show, but I can tell you really quick, I can back that up because I did have my own near-death experience in 1981. That is a fact, what you just said. It's true. And stay tuned because we want to have the show on back. Okay, so really quick, where can people find you?
Okay, www.super-relativity.com. That's my website, and you got a bunch of links to go to other places, YouTube page and all that other stuff there, a blog and so forth. So just go to www.super-relativity.com.
Well, Mark, we definitely want to have you back for a continuation of this. There's
Most definitely. This is a great show.
So much more to talk to. I can listen to you all night, honestly.
So much knowledge. Unfortunately, what a short time frame. But thank you so much for coming on Horsefly Chronicles Radio. And Julie, wrap it up.
Okay, guys. Well, special thank you to Mark, of course, and to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show. We love them. They've been sponsoring the show from day one. And please join us next Monday night at 7 CT and 8 EST on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. And stay tuned for Trish Mo with The Missing Piece.
Everyone have a safe, great night. Thank you so much. Thank you to our guest. We'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.